And welcome everyone to First Unitarian Church of Honolulu's weekly Pau Hana. This is the time when we gather to talk about some of the things that are going on around us here at the church and in our community. And we're very excited this special Pau Hana to have the Reverend Catherine Ishida with us, who is going to be our guest, who is another a member of this church and also serves the UU world in various ways and even manages to do some other things in the world, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. Uh, so hi, how are you doing today, Kat?
I'm oops. I'm doing okay today. I'm just I was on holiday last week and I overdid it a little bit. Um, boogie boarding 3 days in a row and I kind of had a bit of a tumble. So I'm recovering from that, but otherwise I'm doing great. And
Tumble on any
it's good
reef?
to be.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hmm?
Do you just like a tumble on the reef or just sort of gone for a tumble?
Oh, I landed. This is me. This is my boogie board. I went like that.
Oh, oh,
Right underneath my ribs. And
oh,
yeah, so but I got a hike, several, 3 beach days, right? Yeah, 3 beach days in a row, that kind of thing. So it was good to that's one of the things that I really um, did conscientiously this year, was to really take breaks, to plan breaks. So this particular past week, what I did, like, 3 things. One was being active, like hiking and being on the beach, but I also took time to reflect and plan my next year. And I also took time to eat things that I don't usually eat. So that was all fun. So I'm recovering from all that
yeah,
at the moment. Um, so
good. Um,
good.
well, for those of us who don't know, I think we have some newer folks to our group here. And so, what is it that where do you serve? Like, where are you located, and what are you doing these days?
So yeah, I love you, TJ. You're a great interviewer. So I am. So I'm physically in Hilo, Hawaii, and what I've been doing for the past 10 years has been a mixture of different things. Um, there are 3 different Unitarian or Unitarian Universalist identified groups on the Big Island, um, and there are also probably maybe 50 or so other people who feel some connection to Unitarian or Unitarian Universalist community on the island. And so for the past 10 years, I've been trying to just kind of keep people communicating with one another and working with different groups of people, either with congregations or with individuals. Um, and in the past few years, I've been doing a lot of work beyond the Big Island, which is a lot of volunteer opportunities in the Unitarian Universalist movement. So for some reason, I ended up being president of the interfaith group on the Big Island, and president of the Pacific Central District, and president of the Pacific Central Ministers chapter, all at once. Um, Not necessarily, only one of those I knew I was doing. So I'm coming
Welcome
off
to
of
Unitarian
that.
Universalism.
Yes. So, so right now I'm kind of in a different phase of trying to actually let go of most of what I used to be doing and to do something a little bit different. I've been on this island now for 10 years, and I feel like, and maybe many of you, just this past year has been a time of reflection.
Mhm.
And I've decided maybe to do a few other things. I was ordained by the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu, and that was going on 7, 8 years now. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Um, and the promise that I made at the time was to proclaim and embody our shared values.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to find new ways to both proclaim our shared values and embody it. So on the one hand, um, I'm really taking kind of my personal spiritual practices really seriously. And I'm thinking of, instead of kind of working with congregations, just doing a little bit more writing work. So the big news for today is that my first little book, my first little book on loving kindness meditation practice, today is the official publication date.
Yes, so exciting.
So you are, yay, thank you. So you can both support me and support your local bookstore by ordering it. It's a tiny book, just about 10,000 words, if that makes any sense to you. But I wrote the book in 3 weeks, from conception to writing the first manuscript, and then 3 weeks to actually try to turn it into this published form. With all the with all that's going on in the world, with the mail system, it took a little bit longer than 45 days and 6 weeks, but finally today is the publication date, and I began this project on October 1st. So
where do we get it?
So you may purchase this at any of your favorite local bookstores. All you have to say, I'd like to order Loving Kindness by Catherine Ishida, and they should be able to find it.
Great.
And in the process, I learned a lot about the publishing world. So I think my next book is going to be a stress-free guide to self-publishing, just to summarize all my learning. And then I'm trying to figure out what to write next. So.
Are you, first of all, congratulations. Many mentors I've had have said they would never wish writing a book on their worst enemy. So congratulations on, because I mean, our worst enemy is ourselves, so I mean, as a writer myself, just writer to writer, like overcoming oneself and one's desire to not write and to write is a spiritual act. So I also applaud you as a fellow sort of spiritual traveler in this world. So how did it feel to come to completion? Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
It doesn't feel, the most exciting moment, I think, was when I pushed the button on the website, say publish. Right. And what I didn't really realize is how much there is after that. But I think it was this, there's something similar. I don't have any children, but I imagine there's something kind of similar to childbirth, in the sense that at the moment it happens, you are so exhausted, and there are so many feelings and so many chemicals that can go through your body, that it's a truly mixed feeling. And I think now that it's kind of in its toddler stage, it's like it has its own birthday now, it can go out into the world on its own. As you said, there's such a desire to keep meddling. Like, because each iteration, I keep wanting to change something, and it's like, no, it is its own thing now. It has its own life. It can go out into the world and, have its own experience that's separate from my own, process of writing and kind of giving birth to it. So I think the hardest moment was just pushing the button and say, yes, I'm ready to publish this, and it can go out into the world. And that was,
yeah,
it's hard to explain. It's just kind of trepidation and excitement all mixed in together. Yeah.
That's beautiful. A friend of mine told me once, who owns a publishing company, just take note of the 2 or 3 things you want to meddle with the most, and that's your next 2 or 3 books. So yeah. So you already know what you want to write next. So that's good. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that I had help in writing this book. I was actually enrolled in a course called the Tiny Book Course. And it had 2 teachers. One person is a coach, writing coach in Hilo, and another person sort of a publisher in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so that was the course itself gave me that structure of 45 days of going through the entire process of brainstorming to complete, actually having a book in my hand. So that was very helpful. And that is a very accelerated schedule,
Yeah.
I must say. So there were a lot of pieces. And I think the accelerated schedule was helpful in the sense that no matter how much time you have, there's probably pieces that you have to let go. But if you want to get a book out in 45 days, there are a lot of pieces that you have to let go. So you're constantly making these judgment calls as to, okay, um, what does success mean to me? And I'm not going to, don't meddle with my own definition of success.
Yeah. Yeah.
This book has already met all my expectations. Let's not pile more onto it. So it was a good exercise in that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Can you, going back to what you said about the promise you made to the congregation, I think as the two most recently ordained people by the congregation, I'm curious as your junior to hear what proclaiming and embodying our values, what it looks like. Do you think it's in this book, or is this book part of that sort of phase you want to move into?
I think so. So the subtitle of this book is a tiny meditation guide for all beginners.
Okay.
And so I really go through the basics, starting from what is meditation. So that's the first chapter, and what is loving kindness, and why we might start here. And I think that we struggle. I observe that we struggle in our movement with embodiment at times because we love books. I love books. We love books, and we love ideas, and we love the complex interplay of ideas, and like integrity is important to us. We want our lives to reflect our ideas, and our ideas to. So in that sense, we really want to be embodied people, and yet we ask ourselves of so much that sometimes the ideas don't have time to kind of really seep into our body. So one of the main messages in the book is like all cultures have these things, like the tiny little message from the book is all cultures have some rule of what's right behavior. Right? Like we're very interested in doing the right thing in the world. We're interested in right behavior. And when you have to force that into a nugget, most cultures end up with something like the golden rule. Right? Like do unto others as you would like done unto yourself, or do unto others as they would like to be done unto themselves, or love your neighbor as yourself. And the challenge is often that we want to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, but we actually don't know how to love ourselves.
Yeah.
So we so much want to do this thing of loving, but we actually haven't slowed down enough to practice it in our own bodies. And so one of the invitations of this book is, okay, let's try this practice out. And maybe you don't have to think about doing right action. Right action will be sort of your natural response. Because you've thought about this particular value that's important to you so much, and kind of inhabited it in an embodied way for enough time that that's become a habit for you. So you don't need the intellectual intervention to do the right thing. It's in our.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I personally have just seen in the last, say, decade or two of our culture so much disassociation with one's body. to the point that many people who've either been traumatized because of their bodies or have had trauma to their body, whether it's of a violent nature or accident or something, they feel like they are living only from the neck up, because to access the full feeling of their body is fearful, is painful, is, or they think it's wrong or bad because that's what commercialism has told us for the last 50 years. In so many ways, there's a fear of embodiment. Did in your thinking, did you ever talk to anyone who gave you that idea, or have you sensed that, or is that something in the culture that, I don't know, that led to a book about wanting to really feel embodiment and feel your body?
Um, so embodiment has been important to me for a very long time, and it's interesting because it's like the flip side of the coin of my own intellectual engagement. So many of my, so some of you know that my previous profession was as an astrophysicist, and I like asking big questions. And the reason why I became an astrophysicist is what I wanted to know universal truths. Like, I wasn't interested in all the kind of truth that's only applicable to this planet. I wanted like truths, like really big truths. And part of the reason why that was important to me is because I grew up in many different cultures. And I knew that like when I moved into different contexts, the rules would change on me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know, okay, what are the rules that apply in all cases? But the other piece, the linguistic piece of that is, I always have a feeling place that's not necessarily linguistic, because I need to access this kind of neutral space to get into gear for a particular language. So there's this space between here I'm speaking, with you in English, but if I were in my own home, or if I were in, I went to international school for a while, I might turn around to a different person and I'll be speaking in a different language. And so I have a kind of, I've always had this deep sense of how I feel or how I know that's independent of words. Yeah. So I feel very fortunate to have that.
Yeah.
But I'm also a person who likes to dance and likes to swim, so I enjoy being in my body, which probably helps too.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, that's some about embodiment. And so how do you envision proclamation or proclaiming our values these days? And I mean, has the pandemic changed the way you're looking at that? And I mean, obviously you're proclaiming some truth that you know by putting it in a book, but what do you think the next 2-3 years hold for you in that way?
The pandemic probably shift and begin saying no to things that are not on the top of my list. Like that's what the pandemic did, which is I only have enough room for one project.
Yeah.
Like, one heart project at a time. And so that means saying no to everything else and kind of clearing my slate so I can do what's important to me. And I think the pandemic kind of gave me at least permission to do that. But what I want to do in terms of proclamation came before this. So one of the things that's really frustrating, I think, being sort of being 10 years of gig ministry, really, is that
there's a book.
I never, yes, 10 years of gig ministry. No, it's
Gig
we
ministry.
need some uplifting.
I know.
Yeah, but yeah. So the frustration is that I don't have, I can't ever go deep. Right. You know, you have kind of a neat idea and you present it to folks, and it's a neat idea, and then maybe it will kind of grow some kind of ambulatory movement. It may travel or it may not from there. But I really wanted to just have the opportunity to kind of keep developing an idea.
Yeah.
And I needed to do something other than gig ministry in order to do that. And there are other problems with gig ministry besides my own personal satisfaction in terms of developing ideas. And the other piece is um, I'm really happy that the whole movement kind of has a better understanding that like we have a theology, like we have values, we have ideas, we have a worldview that we don't all share all of it, but there's these constellation of values and worldviews that we claim for ourselves, and we actually need to articulate it. We actually do have a theology a worldview that, and it's important that we actually say what that is, right? So that we are truly bound by values and not by, well, this is the way we've done things for the past 6 months
Yeah.
or longer. And I want Unitarian Universalism. Like, as I said, I'm interested in universal truths. And I'm a Unitarian Universalist because I feel like our movement actually um, kind of cradles in our values and belief systems um, things that are of universal value. And I want to articulate those. And for me, I believe that our movement is a multi-religious humanistic faith tradition. And so one of the projects that I had before COVID was, okay, um, are there common texts that, even if you're not from the US, even if you're not Unitarian Universalist, are there common texts that exist that people from different cultures from around the world reference in order to um, have an understanding of what it means to be human and what it means to be humane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think these books will have a broad audience, but like I want to go to some of the ethical classics. Maybe it's Menzi from the Confucian tradition. Maybe it's, Aristotle, because we cannot talk ethics. Like every ethical conversation is some kind of phone tag with Aristotle in some way.
Yeah. And
So I'd like to make
the entire Christian tradition is built on Augustine's view of Aristotle and Thomas's view of Plato. I mean, you can't have
yeah.
the entire, that's just one faith, that is entirely based on Plato and Aristotle, even though no one wants to admit it. So just kidding. But yeah.
It's like that Aristotle's worldview, for better or for worse, um, influences, like puts a box on the possible conversations. So it helps to like engage with Aristotle just so you know where that box is and it becomes visible.
Yeah.
So we can actually kind of, okay, let's open it up, or let's put the little Lego box with the other Lego boxes and build something new with it. But whatever it's going to be. So I think it'll be nice if we, I love our movement, that people in our movement come from so many different cultural backgrounds, and they bring all their kind of sacred texts with them into our movement. And I appreciate that. And it would be nice to say, okay, why don't we read these things together? And have that not be sort of a Unitarian Universalist reading list, but have it be a reading list for everyone who wants to talk about what it means to be human.
Yeah. It's, to me, that's where I jump into, like, well, it's almost like where metaphor starts to come in. I know we're getting in this, geeking out a little bit, but it's like we can have the truth and like the universal truths, but then this feeling that sometimes a metaphor we find for the truths feels more real than the truth expressed. So if you have a logic problem that's expressed in a uh, I'm sorry, if you have an equation that's just numbers and symbols, but then you can have that, but then you can also have a word problem, that expresses the same idea like through another way. I get sort of, I'm just going to gravitate toward the word problem because it's like, it's something that's more interesting. But then through time, like those words, they kind of get, I don't know, in the way, or they can get messy, and then the words take on more meaning than the equation ever had. It's like, instead of focusing on how we get to 2 from this, quadratic or differential or some kind of equation, now we're worrying about, Jenny, and whether she had 5 loaves, and all of a sudden then there were 3 loaves, and all of a sudden we're worshiping Jenny and loaves, and we forgot that we're trying to get to 2. There's I mean, I'm probably stretching it, but that's a kind of what some people would say is some organized religions just kind of spun out about Jenny and the loaves and forgot about getting to 2. So yeah. But I know now we're just jibber jabbering, but one of the things that that you kind of raise in this, that's interesting to me is this sort of idea of getting a project out of the way that was on your mind, and now you're on to like something else as this process. It's almost like you had to just kind of get this thing done. And do you find that is that's just something that's so human, right? And that we see in other people's lives, and just, we can get this one thing out of the way, then this whole other world kind of opens up. Are you feeling that now, like having done this project, that you're now looking to these other things? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the what is the quote? I think this comes out of, this exists in sort of the coaching culture in general, which is like each action you take makes every next action a lot easier. So I do think that having done this little exercise of publishing a book, I won't put myself into a 45-day deadline in the future, but at least I can say, I know how to break up the process into small enough pieces that I can keep doing it in a way that it's not, when a project just is so huge and you just don't know where to like start nibbling on it. But now it's like, okay, this is how I can turn it into something that I can do in a digestible way.
Yeah.
And there's this other piece of, so there's that, like having done something once, now I can kind of do a riff on the theme and do it in different ways. And I think there's also something true to, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but if you want something to get done, ask somebody who's busy. Right? And it's not because it's not to uplift busyness per se, but there's something about just, keep experimenting, just keep trying, keep doing something, just keeping kind of a rhythm in our lives and not letting kind of little setbacks kind of stop us in our tracks. It's like, okay, I'm not going this way, and I'm going this way, but I'm still kind of moving in some direction towards whatever this, I don't want to call it passion. I don't want to call it purpose. I don't want to call it ultimate whatever. And maybe this is where the metaphor actually helps, which is just,
Yeah.
Here on this island, the sunsets have been absolutely beautiful lately. And it's because there have been a lot of clouds, so there are a lot of beautiful colors. And it's like, I just want to keep moving in the direction where I see the beautiful clouds.
Great. I want to shift a little bit. That's it. I mean,
Okay.
that's what I want to do too.
Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit because you mentioned something about theology, and I want to get back to that. But I could start with this question, which someone asked me. As folks know, it's helpful if you send me questions you have for Kat by private or direct message, so I can kind of fold them in. So one question was, to kind of start this question, is when you're asked what's a Unitarian, what do you say? I kind of talked about this in a sermon recently of like, what does the world say a Unitarian is? What do we say it is? And what do you say a Unitarian Universalist is when asked?
When asked? The easiest one is to say, well, it depends on what you're looking for, right? So one of the taglines I have is like, we welcome all who welcome all.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
we're people who welcome all.
Maybe someone didn't hear it. We welcome all who welcome all. We are a people who welcome all who welcome all. Yeah. Beautiful. And so it kind of, in reading this new, well, really, it's not just in the new book, Widening the Circle of Concern. It's been something that's been going on for years. It's starting to ask, what is our theological position? What is UU theology? I think Paul Razor's book probably came about as close. I preached about that about a year ago, about there's two books, prophetic, sort of finding the prophetic voice, and then also the other one's escaping me. It's in my study, but he's writing about sort of what liberal theology is, but what is for you, like, what is your theological standing or your sort of theological outlook of Unitarian Universalism?
Well, I think my personal outlook is that we are what I hope Unitarian Universalism will become is a multi-religious humanism. Right? Like, I do think that the core of Unitarian Universalism is, and I think this is Paul Razor talking about a reformed modernism. So that's aware of postmodern critique. So I think that is something like, we're a movement that asks, what does it mean to be human, right? In this life, in this world. And we do seek so there's a humility that comes from realizing that we're human and that we are not limited in how we can know, and by the fact that we're limited by what humans are capable of. And I think we're also but we choose not to be limited, but we're open to the full potential of what we are capable as humans, not in terms necessarily of intellectual achievement, but in terms of the capacity to love one another and hold one another and care for one another, and imagine a world where we can all thrive. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's,
I do think that
yeah, I mean, that's a very core, at the central, especially of thriving in a way that allows others to thrive, I think is a big part of, at the core of what church communities are built around, is creating a space where all can be, can not just hang out, but thrive and grow. Yeah.
yeah, and I think to add to that, the COVID times, and now that the vaccine is coming, um, it sounds kind of Pollyanna-ish when we say, we're community and we're going to learn to love one another and like have how to thrive while letting everybody else thrive. And the truth is that it's not easy.
Right.
Right. Like just to know whether or not the vaccine works, you are going to give some people placebos, right? And so some people who would have been saved by the vaccine will not get the vaccine and therefore may get COVID and die. But if we don't know if the vaccine works, then we can't give it to people. And then the flip side is, some people may be harmed by the vaccine in the trial stage, for example. And as these simple things, like we want to learn how to thrive with others. When it comes to the nitty gritty, is actually really, really complex. And I think that therefore it's okay for a theology to be simple, because the implications of a very simple theology are going to be in practice very heart-wrenching and complicated at times. And that's why we need community, because we never know what the answers are, and there likely is never any clear prescription that comes from even the most obvious of theological statements.
Yeah. It's when you talk about that, I mean, it's that feeling of, if what I need to feel whole or well or flourishing, it's what we're seeing a lot of in the world right now, is going to impact or affect or take away another's ability to flourish, grow, and change, is like who's right, who wins, and who gets to sort of have that space. And if my theology has set up something that doesn't account for how we have to interact in relationship, it can get very, painful, when someone feels they're either being kept in a place, or someone else is taking up a lot of the oxygen or a lot of the room, or whatever that really looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this, in some ways the answer, like the I can't be this atomic I of just this skin-bound me, right? We need to have a sense of, I need to have a sense of me that's larger than what's in this kind of contour.
And I mean,
and I think
we are the same, are we not, made of stars, made of the same elements that are, well, I'm just going now into your, I like to quote David Byrne, who is my favorite, astronomer. No, I'm just kidding. The lead singer of Talking Heads. But there must be something to your knowledge and experience with, with the world or the universe, that starts to, when you talk about, I have to believe I'm something more than this. I mean, aren't we more than, aren't we physically, like by the laws of physics, more than just this contained piece of matter clomping around on the crust of the earth?
Yeah, I commend to us the I forget if it's an Amazon Prime series. There's a television series by Latif Nasser, who's one of the producers of the podcast Radio Lab, where he explores various ways in which we're interconnected with one another.
Uh-huh.
And there is so one of the things that comes out of when we do statistical observations of human behavior, a lot of natural phenomena, including human behavior, or if you take the if you want to take a physics approach to understanding the universe, like, yeah, we're an integral part of the universe. We're made of star stuff, and we are bound by the physical laws of the universe. And whether or not we ultimately truly have free will is up for debate. And yet we experience this world as if we have choices. And I think that our theology, and I'm not sure why I'm going there, but I think it's that there's a delicate balance of living as if we have free will when we know we don't. Mm. Or we may not. We don't know if we don't, but like if we may not.
Yeah.
And the reason for kind of doing this little koan exercise really is to really make ourselves a little bit more permeable, like let the universe actually flow through us and understand that we're like a wave, we're an expression, we're a shape that shows up in the universe momentarily as different patterns move through this thing. And we get to enjoy it. We get to enjoy existence. But that existence is not, our existence isn't limited. The joy in existence comes when we realize that, well, I'm not just this thing that's going to be born and then die. I really am this experience that's happening in the universe. And then when I know that, it's much easier to realize that, like, we're not separate from one another. Right. I'm looking at some, like, I'm seeing a big TJ and some little faces up there, and I just know that if I were to, if I were able to be in the same room with all y'all and feel what you're feeling, like, I will feel what you're feeling, because that's how we are as humans. We do have the capacity to empathize, and that is allowing you, whatever hormonal, chemical, biological thing that's happening in you is actually creating a physical, hormonal, chemical, biological, whatever feeling in me. I can't separate that. I can't cut you off. And that's actually really real. And the more we spend time realizing that that's real, we can start to extrapolate into folks that are maybe even, who are not in the Zoom call, for example. So
when you start,
TJ, you let me go.
No, I was just gonna say, and you all can say whatever you think, but Kat, I gotta tell you, like, first of all, there must only be a dozen or so, people with doctorates in astrophysics and who are also ordained ministers. So you're in a really small group. And I feel like I just feel like your voice needs to be heard. Like, when you start talking like that, and I know this is just me being your friend, it just matters so much more to me, frankly, than when other people say stuff like that. Sorry, your opinion matters more because of your background and what you have to bring to the table. And because I know you as such a wonderful person, I don't know. When other people talk about it, it's like, yeah, I get it. But when you do, you know what you're talking about. And so to me, it just lands very real. You think you're talking out into here, and I'm like, no, I'm with you 100%, and I think it's beautiful.
Mm.
So yeah. Um, so there have been some requests because we're coming into our sort of the home stretch here. Could you read some from your book? I mean, I think that would be, we don't want to give it away, but do you have a passage you'd like to read from your book?
Um, well, I'll just read the introduction, shall I? So you
Yeah,
know what this book is about.
good.
Okay. Because this book started as I was preparing for to give a message at the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu last year, January.
Yeah.
So the title of my that service was Just Love. And this is, so loving kindness meditation practice. In the process of preparing for that, I decided that loving kindness meditation practice is what I had to do this year. And so the introduction is, in January 2020, I chose to experiment with loving kindness meditation for the year. It's a simple practice. In a calm state, slowly, gently, and deliberately wish for safety, health, happiness, and ease in this world for yourself, a beloved person, a neutral person, a challenging person, and all beings. Little did I know that in a matter of weeks, the whole world will be wishing each other safety and health. This tiny guide is an invitation for you to join me in this beautiful and profound practice. It's a collection of tips and insights that might inspire you to try this practice for yourself. What if we lived in a world where people always, truly and sincerely, wish for the safety, health, happiness, and ease for themselves and others, no exceptions? What if we lived in a world where everyone knows how to love and to be kind? What if we lived in a world where we all know how to begin again, quickly and compassionately, every time we experience a stumble, fall, roadblock, setback, disappointment, or betrayal? What if we lived in a world where everyone felt deeply loved, sustained by loving kindness? These hopes are my stars, and stars can guide, even when beyond reach.
I'm sorry, even when beyond. Oh, okay.
Even when beyond reach.
When beyond reach. Got it. That is beautiful.
Beyond reach.
See,
So,
you've got the stars right in there. You can't help it.
I got the stars right in here. So
it makes, whenever I hear this one quote, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. What were you saying?
I was going on to something else, but I want you to say some more about when you were talking about stars and you were about to talk about your opening.
That hurt.
No, I think.
Okay, then.
I think the opening stands for itself.
Okay, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it sounds beautiful, and I'm looking forward to reading it a lot. I'm actually reading with a friend. I'm going through Wherever You Go, There You Are, the John Kabat-Zinn book right now, and so it'll be a good companion. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is when you're talking about the universe, and I hear the quote often, although it's often misquoted. A lot of times people say the moral arc of the universe, but that's not what the quote is. The quote is the arc of the moral universe. And so that always makes me think about the universe and whether it's got a moral, and I import moral meaning good or bad, but maybe it's the moral meaning a story. And so like it makes me think about what is the story of the universe telling us, like the arc of the moral universe. But I don't know. What do you, when you hear that quote, do you think of an actual moral universe, or do you think of the universe itself as moral, or do you just say it's pretty poetry and we're going to move on to other things?
I think so. I think of Richard Wright's work.
Oh,
So he's an author. And so one of my favorite books is The Moral Animal.
uh-huh.
So this is about evolutionary psychology, and he applies the theories of evolutionary psychology to Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and he's also written a book called Non-Zero, where he argues that there is a moral trajectory in the universe, or at least in evolution,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So I'm so I'm not 100% sure that there is, but I do think that it's more, I guess I'm more Confucian, in the sense that there's the path of nature. There's a path of nature, and there's a human path, and then there's path of the animals, and all these different sort of ways of being in the world. And the heavenly path is not necessarily moral in the human context.
Right.
So I do think morality is a human thing, and that evolutionary processes aren't necessarily our friend. Right? They want the survival. Our genes want to survive as genes, not as humans. So I'm doing anthropomorphizing there, yeah. So
Yeah.
The genes probably don't think I want this, but they're optimized for their own survival, not ours.
Right.
Not for our happiness, say, or not for our moral well-being. And so that's what makes it difficult.
And that is what
we're not designed to do.
Yeah. So to me, and it kind of comes back around to where you're talking about, like, what church is a group of people who welcome all. To me, I wonder if that is, it's almost that it's because of the way the morality or amorality. I was accused of being amoral in my psych evaluation to be a minister, just telling you, just slightly amoral, not immoral. And they said, oh, you're slightly amoral, but we get that a lot with Unitarian Universalists. So I was like, all right, fine. But the sort of morality or amorality of the universe, if that is what community and love in a community is for, I feel like it's to help me through the questionable existence of morality in the universe. That's why we need church, like, and people who love us, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna do a co-sermon on this. We're gonna do one together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think that's what it comes back to. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering if folks who've been listening have reflections to share, or for me, it's a question mark. But I do think that, I need other people to help me, because my natural state, isn't always in my own best interest.
So you're saying your genes are maybe just in their own interest and not in Kat's best interest all the time.
Their own interests. Yeah.
That's a funny thing I'll have to meditate on. I have to have some loving kindness for my genes that want to eat another serving of lasagna after I already had one right before this call. But that's a whole nother story. So
Yeah.
Well, we normally, we try to wrap it at an hour, but we normally don't open the mics just because of my strange desire to run this like a television show. But if people do have comments, if you want to hear some thoughts, or if people want to stick around and chat for a little while, that lasagna will wait. I can wait. If anyone has any questions or comments, if you want to do that, Kat, it's your show. Does anyone want to say anything or ask anything?
Sending love and gratitude for your presence and your thoughtfulness, and your years of thoughtfulness.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Congratulations on your book.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Is this kind of like a NaNoWriMo for another version? The idea where you write a novel or something in 30 days, but you're doing it all from start to publishing in what, 45 days or something?
Yeah, it was a course called the Tiny Book Course.
Nice.
So
Interesting. And thank you for sharing some more of yourself. I mean, I've known you through the church and an OWL, and I had spent a lot of time with you in OWL and had no idea that you had an astrophysics background. You are a woman of many mysteries, Catherine Ishida.
Okay. Thank you. I miss you all.
Yeah. Me too.
Catherine, I'm curious, did you self-impose the 45-day deadline, or was that a publisher's agreement?
So this is a self-published book. No, I took a course that said, okay, we will go from brainstorming to having a book in your hand in 45 days. And, in reality, the course was much more flexible than that, but I chose to say, okay, I'm going to follow this timeline and see what I can accomplish in 45 days. Yeah.
Oh, that's still pretty harsh. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Sometimes it's helpful to have other people, give you a structure.
Mhm.
To get things done. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I do want to mention that the book is available on Amazon, but you've stressed that you'd like that we go, please, to independent bookstores to purchase this. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
It can be ordered through an independent bookstore. If you like an ebook format, it's available as an ebook in both Kindle and EPUB formats. I don't know. I don't know if the information is like circulated into the system well enough yet, but it should be available.
Yeah. So if we call Bookends and order, say, order some copies, like that's how we go. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
It's basically bookstores get to order. So it's self-published, so the price feels a little bit high to me, but it gives the bookstore the ability to. They have basically a 55% margin that they can use to give a discount or to actually pay for their bills to keep the lights on. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you buy through a local bookstore, they get to keep a lot of it to keep the bookstore alive.
Okay.
Up to half.
I have Dave and Junko have their hand up, and then I have another question from direct messaging. Go ahead, Dave and Junko.
Yes, Catherine, I was really interested in your focus on universal truth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that still is relevant to universalists and Unitarians? It seems we are so involved in social justice doing anything like universal truth sometimes.
Yes, I think that it's important. It may be a universal truth that all of our worldviews are relative. Does that kind of make sense? So I think that it's really important for us to be able to say, like, I don't have the truth, but this is what I think. This is my best guess at it, and I have no other way to live by but by my best guess. So I do think that it's helpful for us to be able to say, to come together and say, okay, this is my best guess. What's your best guess? So in that sense, there's a process. I don't think we'll ever find how should I put it? I don't think we'll necessarily ever get to say like 100% consensus around this is the truth among all human beings. I don't think we'll get there, but I think that we can still have a process where we're all guessing and we share what our guesses are, and we'll get closer and closer to something of that will have a broader and broader consensus among us. And I think that's worth striving for.
Yeah. I have one more question here, and maybe this would be a nice way to close. Did your UU background take you to astrophysics in some way?
The astrophysics came first, but yeah, so I moved to Hawaii to do astrophysics, and then I ended up in the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu, and then look what happened. But
well, it's weird because I've enrolled in the
so
astrophysics PhD program next year, so we're doing reverse. No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah, I was told when I was in grad school, it's like, don't spend so much time in church, because I think the chair of the physics department was actually, I don't know if they were a member, but they were definitely a spouse of a member at the time. And they were like, "What are you doing here?
You should be working.
Don't go to church."
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but the astrophysics came first. But I am a fourth generation once moved Unitarian on my mother's side, and my mother was very sad when I started going to the UU church, because she thought she had gotten out of me.
Yeah.
So I didn't. When I became a member of the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu, I didn't realize that I had gone to All Souls New York preschool, UU preschool.
Oh.
When I was a child.
Preschool on my street. I lived on 79th.
Yeah.
Second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went to. But, I don't have any memories of that. But I'm guessing that maybe it had an influence. Who knows? Yeah. So it's hard to know which one came first. But as an adult, the astrophysics came first.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for such a lovely time, and for all of your thoughts and your openness and your sharing. It was really a beautiful, beautiful experience, and I hope everyone's going to run out and buy the book. So.
Thank you. You'll be helping your bookstore and me a little bit, and
yeah.
And I hope that I'll have a chance to just have more of a conversation with each and every one of you sometime soon. Because
yeah, me too. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the recording here.